Hello everyone, welcome to Thursday Craft. I'm so happy to be here and I really appreciate you tuning in. Today we are going to be making a summer fruit piñata, the pattern of which is going to be found in the Making It Guide to Crafting. I don't know if any of you have watched the show on NBC, but this is the book they put out that has patterns of many of the crafts that they've done on the show. This is actually my copy I'm using today, but the really exciting news is that this is a new acquisition for the library. So even though it's not quite ready for checkout, please keep your eye out for when you can place a hold and order it yourself if you feel like getting a little crafty at home. So I'm going to show you what we're going to be doing today. We are going to be doing the Piñata Party favors and invitations. So you'll notice on the left hand of the screen there that you can see a photo of the little piñatas once they're completed, all the materials that we need. And today we're going to be doing the watermelon and the lemon. All right, so it's always nice to know what your finished craft is going to look like before we start. So I wanted to make sure I started with that. Now we're going to go over what materials I'm going to be using today. As always, I've got my handy glue gun plugged in and ready to go. If you don't have a glue gun at home, I would suggest using a glue stick if you have it. Some of the colored paper we're going to be using is a bit thin, so if you have something that's less gloopy, then that will work really well. You could even use tape or possibly staples if you don't have glue. I've got my pair of scissors here. I have one paper plate. You can use any size or any thick or thinness of the plate, and you can just adjust the paper cutouts that you're using depending on the size of the plate. Now, I have quite a few paper cutouts here, so we'll walk through them more in detail as we go along, but for the green rind of the watermelon, I have one long strip that's about 2 inches in width, and mine is about 14 inches in length. As we go along, I will show you how to measure the paper to your plate, so we can talk about that in more detail. And then I have 2 strips of the green rind that are the same length, but only 1 inch in width. So I just took the original streamer I had and cut it in half. Then we have 4 thick red strips and 8 long red strips. I'll go into those in more detail once we get to that part. The last thing is, these piñatas can be used for a variety of things. The pattern says that you can put candy in them, treats, confetti, and you can even use them as a really cute holder for sending a party invitation. I was worried that if I bought candy for this craft that I would eat the entire bag. So today I'm going to play it safe and use paper confetti that I had lying around from a previous project. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is take our paper plate. Now, to make it look like a slice of watermelon or lemon, what you're going to do is fold it in half. So this can be a little tricky. It might take a couple of times, but what I'm going to do is just try to make it really even. I'm going to line up the circular edges with one another, and then just kind of, once I have those pinned down, start to crease the middle line with my fingers. To make it a little bit easier on myself, I'm going to use my scissors and snip along that line on both edges. And then, again, make sure that there's a folded crease. So once I open the plate, I have my 2 snips and I have my folded edge that's going to be the guideline for cutting. So I'm just going to cut straight down the middle. It's a little bit hard to do a completely straight line or keep it perfect, so just do your best. It'll turn out looking great. All right, so now I have my 2 halves of the paper plate. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to fold them up together once more with the rounded edges aligning. So I'm just going to do my best to make sure the straight edge matches and then the circular edges match. So you'll notice there's a little pocket, like a little pita pocket in the middle where you're going to put your candy or confetti or invitation. And then the first thing we're going to do is glue around the edge to make sure that it's secure. So I'm going to take my handy dandy glue gun and just line the circular edge with hot glue. Careful of your fingers, depending on how thick your plate is. And again, I'm just going to align the straight edge and then press down to make sure that everything sticks. Again, you'll notice that now my edges are secure and I've got my pocket in the middle. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna work from the circular edge upward, so basically from the bottom up. So the first thing I'm gonna do is take my 2-inch thick green crepe paper. So I'm using crepe paper, in other words, a streamer, but you can also use tissue paper if you have a gift wrap supply at home. You can use construction paper, whatever you have lying around that's colored is great. So I'm gonna take this. And there are 2 ways to do this. You can start on one edge and glue as you go around, or you can start in the middle and fold around both sides. So I'm going to show you both ways, one at a time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay glue on the very tip-top edge of my semicircle. So I'm going to do about half of it first, glue that down, and then do the other half, just because I don't want the glue to dry before I'm done. So I'm just going to line up the bottom of the streamer with the bottom of the plate there. Now you'll notice there's a point where the streamer comes off the edge of the plate. At that point, you're just going to make a little bit of a crease, if everyone can see that, to align it with the plate again. Okay, and then now we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to align my plate with glue right around the outside edge. And then as the streamer comes off the plate, I'm just going to put a little notch so that I can twist it around. All right, there we go. It's almost to the edge. I came a little short, but that's okay because we are going to be covering this green with some more fringe for the rind. So I've got my glue stuck. Now what I'm going to do is flip it over to the other side. Now what you're going to be doing with this green is folding it up and gluing it to the other side of the paper rim. So we did it from one side to the next. Now I'm going to show you how to do it from the middle, moving upwards. I find that this way is great because it turns out looking a little bit neater. You can kind of make the folds more uniform, but again, just do it to your preference. Whatever is easiest, whatever you have the most fun doing is great. Okay, so I've got my strip line there. Now you'll notice that the crepe comes off the paper plate, so all we're going to do is fold it and fold it so that we can bring it closer to the rim here. So I'm just going to do this at the same time. So I'm going to finish gluing here. I'm going to do the other side as well. So I'm going to fold up and stick, fold up and stick, fold and stick, fold and stick, fold and stick, fold and stick. Okay, so now we have got our piece of green covering our rind. So now what we're going to do is use our 2 smaller pieces that are about 1 inch thick. I'm going to lay them on top of one another and cut the fringe at the same time. It's just a time-saving trick. You can do them one at a time if you want, but I always find it handy and fun to do both at a time. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing now, I'm going to hold this up so you can see. I'm going to start at one edge and I'm going to be creating cuts about 1/4 of an inch thick. I find with these projects that the smaller you make the fringe, the better the texture is and it's easier to work with. But if you wanted to do thick fringe, then you would just spread out the cuts. Now, when you're doing this, careful of your fingers, of course, you're just going to be snipping halfway into the width. So you can just place your scissors about halfway up so that you're leaving a border for everything to stay connected, but you're creating this really fun fringe. So I hope everyone can see that. I'm just going all the way down. They definitely don't have to be equidistant. You could do some thick, some thin, whatever seems fun to you in the moment. But again, I just suggest doing about 1/4 of an inch cuts because it ends up being really nice texturally. Okay, so that's my end. So now if I hold this up and kind of spread it out, you'll notice that the fringe is there on the bottom. Okay, so now, when you're doing this at home, it's a great idea to cover both sides of the watermelon. I'm just going to be showing you how to do one side. So keep in mind that if you want to do the other side at home, just double the pieces of paper you need so that you can do both sides. Okay, so I'm going to take this first piece of fringe, and what I'm going to be doing is laying it around the rind with the fringe cut side down. So I want the piece that's connected to be on top and then the fringe to be down. Okay, so with this, I'm just going to start on one end, laying my glue down, And I want the fringe to be visible and kind of hang off a bit. So whoopsie. Sometimes hot glue can be very tricky, as you're seeing here. So you'll notice when I'm gluing, I'm keeping it on top of the green that we already laid so that the fringe is hanging off of the edge of the paper plate. And I'm just going to keep going around. With these pieces of paper that have the fringe in them, they're much more pliable, so it's easy to bend them and kind of shape them as you need. So just do your best as you're going around. Okay, and then I'm going to do the top here. Now, as is happening with mine, and as might happen with yours, some of these pieces of paper might not be the exact right size, but don't worry about that. At the very end, we're going to snip everything off so that it's great alignment on the top. So we can just leave that for now. Okay, now with my second piece of the green fringe, I'm going to lay it slightly higher than the first fringe. So I want it to cover what I'm doing so that there are two visible lines. Okay, so what I'm going to do with my paper plate is the second line of glue, I'm going to put right when the dome of the paper plate starts to lift up here. So again, you're just doing the next line of glue a little bit higher than the previous one, and then I can show you what this looks like afterwards. Okay, so again, just pressing down, and again, depending on how thin the paper that you're using is, you will definitely be able to feel the hot glue between the paper and your fingers, so just be very careful. And I'm going to go all the way around, making sure that I'm being as careful as I can, and then my fringe is lying the way that I want. Okay, so if you can see this here, I have my first line of fringe and then the second one right above, and you're starting to see the layers as we stack. Okay, so now that we have the rind done, what we're going to do is fill the piñata pocket and then start to add on the red. So again, I have my colorful paper here. If you had candy, if you had an invitation or a letter you'd like to put inside, you can do that now. So all I'm going to do is drop this. Ooh, that didn't go as well as I had hoped, but that's okay. Being messy makes it more fun. So you'll see our little pocket is full of confetti there. So that's inside for whoever you're sending this to discover. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 4 strips of red that I have laid out here to close the pocket. So these strips are about 2 inches in width and maybe like 5 inches in length. The important thing to remember is that you just need it to cover the top there. So as long as you have a little bit to glue on either side of it to keep it closed, you're doing great. So let me go ahead and I'm going to put a line of glue, got my extra glue stick here, a line of glue just really close to the top of the pocket, and then stick the edge with plenty of space to fold over right there. So you notice I'm adding the glue right here and just making there's plenty of space to go up and over and then pin down on the other side. So let me keep this facing you, and then I'm going to do the other 2 pieces right here. Make sure, if you can, that you're just, the crepe paper goes to the edge of the paper plate so there's no gaps where the candy or the confetti can fall out. All right, so now if we look at it, you'll notice I've got my 4 pieces here. The top is still open, but now I'm going to flip these over to cover. Now, I don't want to pull these super tight because then the top will pucker. I want to keep the length of the mouth that's open about the same. So I'm just going to lightly pull it over and then glue it there. So again, I'm going to do my line of glue. Let's just do all the way this time. I'm going to pull it up lightly and pin, but I'm not pulling so hard that it's making the top pucker. All right, there we go. So now we have the mouth of our piñata closed. So all I'm going to do is trim the pieces that overlay onto the green part. So you can just make sure they're in alignment with the curve of the paper plate. And then we'll trim everything else at the end. All right, so there we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I have these 8 strips of paper here. The first 2 strips that I did are about as long as the rind, the green. So they're about 14 inches or so. So that you guys don't get completely bored as I'm snipping a lot of fringe pieces, I've already cut these pieces of tissue paper. So now I'm just going to be gluing them. So same thing as the green rind. You're going to start by gluing slightly above your last line of glue and kind of keeping it in alignment with the circular part of the paper plate that comes up. So I'm going to start on one side and simply pin down as I go. And then I'll lift this up when I'm done to show you. So again, I'm just making sure that it goes along the rim. Okay. And then again, we have excess at the top, but that's okay, we're gonna snip it. So as you'll see, we have our first layer of red now. So it's starting to look like a filled in watermelon, I love it. So the next strip I have is the same size, and I'm just gonna lay it slightly above the one that we did before. And it's just gonna be this process for the entire section of the fruit. So I'm gonna go a little bit more quickly through these next parts just because it'll be repetitious. But when you're doing it at home, go as slowly as you need to make sure everything is aligned and looking fabulous. Okay, so now you'll notice that you can start to see the layers as we build from the bottom to the top, and we can snip the excess later. Now I'm going to use my next strip, which is a little bit shorter. This one I think is about 10 inches. You'll notice that as we go from the bottom to the top, we're going to be using more curved pieces, and then it'll start going to more straight pieces. So to avoid a lot of excess paper that I'm wasting, that's why I'm snipping these a little bit shorter, because we'll need less to cover less surface area. So again, I'm going to put the line of glue, let me tip it so you guys can see it, just above the last line that I did. Okay, and then I'm going to be laying this down, of course, making sure the fringe is facing the bottom and pinning down as I go. Okay. All right, I'm going to take my next piece, which is about the same length, fringe towards the bottom, and I'm going to do a hot glue line right above my last one. This time I'm going to go from the opposite side just to mix it up. Okay, and that last glue line. Okay. And you'll see as we get higher and higher, you can really see the layers start to come out. So my next strip is going to be shorter than the rest because, again, less surface area to cover. So I'm just going to glue half so it doesn't dry on me. All right, lifting and shaping as we go around. I noticed that mine isn't totally stuck to the paper plate, so I'm just going to put a dab of glue under there, so I'm working with a more fixed surface. Perfect, here we go. So we're getting so close to the end, so I've got my, let's see, about my 5th piece of paper here, 5th or 6th. Again, I'm just doing a semicircle to cover, laying it down above the last layer. If you are using a hot glue gun, I'm sure, like me, at the end you'll spend a lot of time picking away the stringiness of the glue, but that's okay. That can be left to the very end. And now I have my final 2 pieces. So rather than creating a really large arch with these, I'm going to make it a little straighter so that they eventually cover the top here. So I'm just going to do a line above. And again, make this a little bit straighter. Okay, you'll see it there. Add my last glue stick in here. All right. Now, when I practice this, I think that I spread the tissue paper out a little bit further, and now that we're doing it, I clustered it closer. So you'll notice I'm a little bit short on the top. So if that was the case at home, just cut one more strip to cover the top. But again, this doesn't have to be perfect, so you get the idea. You would just lay one or two more strips to get to the top there. Now, we've got our watermelon done. What I'm gonna do is cut all the excess off to line up with the straight edge here. So I'll keep this facing you, and all I'm gonna do is snip, 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 so that hopefully, and I think we do, yes, have our straight edge. All right, so this is everything that we're gonna be gluing on the watermelon. The last step is the beautiful little black seeds. So I have a Sharpie here. In the actual pattern in the book, they suggest that you cut out the shape of the seed using black cardstock, construction paper, but for the sake of expediency, I'm just gonna draw them on with a Sharpie. You have to use what you have around, right? So I am going to create just a couple of little black seeds just spread out throughout the watermelon. Keep in mind that the seed is the shape of a teardrop, so I'm just gonna be doing the shape of a teardrop. So I'm gonna be doing here, I'm gonna start up top. Hope you guys can see this. I'll do it upside down. Let's see how skilled I am. All right, so I'm gonna do a seed and fill it in. I'm gonna do a seed and fill it in. And again, these can just be kind of spaced out. If you were to cut out seeds from black construction paper, cardstock, you would have a little bit more control over the shape and consistency. I noticed that as I'm drawing them on, if I'm drawing over two pieces of crepe paper, then they kind of lift up and it kind of gets a little wonky, but that is okay. So you can do it either way. Where am I missing one here? And let's do one on the side. Okay. All right, so this is our watermelon piñata, completely complete. I hear the confetti. I'd be able to eat the candy if that's what I had put inside. So I really hope you guys enjoyed doing that as much as I did. So I am gonna show you one more design here. As you remember from seeing in the book, they also have the option of doing a lemon slice or an orange slice. I'm gonna be doing a lemon slice today. So let me go ahead and clear this out of the way, and I'm gonna show you a demonstration of how to create that one. Let's prop our little watermelon up. I'm so proud of it. I want it to be, I don't know if that's totally visible, but okay, so let me come over here and grab the pieces that I'm gonna be showing you guys how to make the lemon with. Okay, so first and foremost, I have a blank piece of paper. I use a piece of printer paper, but any construction paper, anything you have that's white or a light color. I have a pencil, and then I have my plate. So if you're gonna make a lemon, the process is the same. You start with a full paper plate, you cut it in half, and then we're gonna be gluing it into a half circle. Now, before we start doing that, I'm gonna show you how to cut out of paper the slices that will show the section of the fruit. In the pattern of the Making It book, they do note that they want you to use a template and a paper cutter. As someone who loves to craft, I've noticed that a lot of these books include those instructions where they want you to have a lot of technology to cut things out. But I am very much a crafter who loves to do things by hand. So I want to encourage all of you other crafters that if you find yourself running into problems because you don't have, expensive technology, there are always ways to do it by hand. You just have to use a little imagination and creativity to figure out the workaround. So I'm going to show you the way that I figured out how to do this by hand. So I'm going to take one of the semicircles that I cut out for my paper plate, and I'm going to place it on this white piece of paper. I'm placing it up so that the border of the plate is above the paper and the very bottom of the plate is making contact with the paper. I hope you guys can all see that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to place my pencil at the very start of the paper plate. All I'm gonna do, and this is great because you don't have to have eyes on it. You don't have to watch yourself do it. You're just kind of doing it by feel. So I'm gonna put the pencil towards the paper plate until I feel it hit the paper plate and the pencil stops. Now, all I wanna do is I'm gonna kind of move the paper plate and the pencil. I wanna keep the pencil pushing in towards the paper plate with a little bit of pressure. but kind of keeping a loose feel on it, because then what's going to happen is I'm going to create a pencil mark around the curved part of the paper plate. And again, I don't have to see it to do it. I'm just going to do it by feel. Then I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to trace from the point where the paper plate meets the paper, and I'm just going to trace the straight line that we've created, which is going to be the top end of the fruit. I love it when it works out. Okay, so now what you're going to see is a almost perfect semicircle that we're tracing here. And this is going to be our guide for cutting it out. Now, if you'll notice, and I'm just going to show you as a quick reminder because so you have a sense of where we're going, this cutout is what we're going to be headed towards. So what I'm cutting out of the white paper is the border of the section of fruit and the little seeds. All right, so this is the outline of that. Now what I'm going to do, you could use a ruler if you want really straight edges, but I'm just doing it for the fun of it, so I'm just going to eyeball it and do my best. I want to create maybe like a 1/4 inch of space to create a white border. So all I'm going to do is, and I'll show you this after I'm done. Along the top, I just want to make sure that there's about a 1/4 inch of space. And I'm drawing the line to create that. Same thing on the bottom. Not perfect, but I'm just following the outer line here, okay? And then I'm just gonna simply erase where those two connect. So I erased the little lines that go across the top there. Now what we're gonna do is straight down the middle, you're gonna create a border for one slice of the fruit. So perpendicular to the top, you're going to create another border there. Now I want to divide these two halves into 2 sections each. So there's 4 slices of fruit. So now I'm going to start right about in the middle of that and do a diagonal line about right here. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay. So there we go. And then I'm going to do it on the other side about halfway through, creating that border. So this is what we're looking like. Now all I'm going to do is cut out the spaces in between the lines that I've drawn. If you have an X-Acto knife at home, that can be a really great way. That can be a really great way to do it. But I'm just going to do it with my scissors, and I'll show you a quick way. So we want to cut out this space here. I'm just going to pinch the paper in that space, and I'm going to cut out, of course, being careful with my fingers, I'm just going to cut out like a little triangle shape. So if you're looking at it here, you'll notice that little space. When you open it, it's a little diamond of space that you can stick your scissors into and finagle so that you have enough space to cut. Okay, so again, I'm just following the lines that I drew. And the great thing about this is when we actually glue this to the lemon slice, we're going to be flipping it over on the other side. So don't worry if you're not cutting exactly on the lines. Seeing pencil marks on this paper won't matter because it'll ultimately be the back side that we're gluing. All right, so there's my first piece cut out there. I'm just going to do the same thing for all the ones in the middle. So I'm going to pinch into the space where I'm cutting. I'm going to cut a little bit of a triangle so that I can get my scissors in there to start the shape, and then I'm just following the lines all the way around. I can already see that my lines are a little wonky. For those of you that like to have, you know, very precise looking crafts, I hope this doesn't drive you too crazy once you see it. But again, you can always feel free to use a ruler to avoid those rough edges if you want. But I say it's beautiful that way. Okay, so here's our second one. I'm just going to be doing the same thing for the last 2. And rather than holding them up, I'll just go ahead and cut and then show you the finished product since you get the idea. Okay. Okay, and I want to keep these little scraps of paper because those will be a great resource when I draw and cut out my seeds. And that's the other thing I love about crafting. The more crafting you do, the more you realize how you can use the scraps and bits. Rather than throwing them away, you can use them as part of your project. Okay. All right, so I've got my last edge I'm cutting here. Perfect. Okay, so you can notice that all of my sectionals are cut out. I did the hardest part first, and now I'm going to do the easiest part, which is just cut around the outside edge to separate that border from the rest of the paper. Okay, so just like, let me finish this cutting out, and then we'll do the seeds next. Okay, so here we go. So now I've got my border. You'll notice this is the side with pencil, but the clean side will be facing out. Now, just like with the watermelon seeds, the lemon seed is going to be the shape of a tear. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my little paper scraps here, and I'm going to use the pointed edge and then draw around that to create my seed. So let me show you what I mean by that. So that's the top of the seed, and I'm just going to do like a rounded semicircle on the bottom. Let me do 2 of these to show you. The pattern has us doing just 2 seeds to put in the middle, so I'll stick to that, but if you want to put more seeds, you definitely can. So I don't know if you guys can see those, but I've got my little teardrop shapes just in my scraps of paper here. So now I'm going to cut those out so that we're ready to go. Okay, fabulous. All right, now for the sake of time, again, so that you guys don't all get really bored watching me just cut strips of paper, I have already prepared the lemon slice that I'm going to be using. Now, the way that I did this was the exact same way that I did the watermelon. The only difference is that I'm using all yellow paper instead of green and red. So it would be the same thing. You would glue the plate together, you would glue the lemon part to fold over the bottom edges of the plate, and then you would start from the bottom and move up. And then close it off up here. If you wanted to do an orange slice instead, you could use orange paper and you'd get the same effect. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it just by yourself, feel free to go back to the beginning of the video and with your new colors, start from step 1. So let me get rid of all these scraps. So I've got my lemon slice. Now all I'm going to be doing is gluing my little cutouts on top just like that. So let me go ahead and adhere those, and then I can show you guys. So I'm just going to do a line across the top. Now, because I drew this and measured it out using the bottom of the plate, it should be a really nice fit. So let me go ahead and do. And I'm actually putting the glue on the paper rather than the crepe paper of the lemon. That way, in case my paper border slightly misses, I don't have big glops of glue. I'm just hiding it with the white paper once I press it down. Same thing here. I'm going to put it on the white paper so that it'll be hidden and adhered. Okay, so we've got this glued on, so you'll see the little slices are really visible now. And last but not least, I'm going to put my 2 lemon seeds right in the middle 2 slices here, close to the upper corner. And voila. So this is our lemon, this is our watermelon. I hope you've had a really fun time doing these. Again, keep your eye out for the Making It Guide to Crafting book. It has a lot of fun things that you can do either yourself or with your family. And please keep in mind that we do have a book club coming up for our adult program next Thursday. Above the link, or I'm sorry, above the video, I'm going to post the link to our programs page. We have the schedule of upcoming programs that are going to coincide with our summer reading challenge. And we really encourage you to come craft with us, come play with us, come read with us. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.